Great. We're at the 100 people mark. So thank you, Eileen, and welcome everyone. So we have 100 people joining from, I guess, all over Canada. And despite being in different time zones, we're here together in the same month, National Engineering Month. So I want to give a big shout out to TELUS Technical Engineering Community, TEC, and Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, OSPE, for putting this together. And this presentation was together for NEM Ontario Infrastructure Week. However, I do see a lot of internal TELUS folk, and I want to say thank you for the support. If you're coming from the mobility side, today you'll learn a bit about security. And if you're from security, then you'll learn about the mobility assets that we protect. And with that, I've titled today's talk as Engineering the Digital Backbone, TELUS's Infrastructure, and Cybersecurity Resiliency. So for the next hour, I'll put you in the shoes of a CSO, Chief Security Officer, and take you through some of the unique infrastructure challenges that we run into as a telecommunications company, but also as a company that's incubating two verticals from within. But before I start, a bit about who I am. My name's Harry. I'm a security consultant here at TELUS, coming from a defense background, but now focused in developing TELUS's managed services. I'm also a University of Alberta graduate, but I lost my ring in Lake Louise, which is a story for another day. And I'm part of the GTLP, Graduate Technology Leadership Program here at TELUS. And as a GTLP member, I've had the privilege of connecting with different business units and leveraging the open door relationships with leadership to discuss unique challenges in their organization, which is why I was able to put together today's wide range of topics. My passions include genuinely infrastructure security, and this year I picked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So if you have any concerns or questions, feel free to take it up with me in the dojo. No, but I'm kidding. There should be plenty of time to discuss questions at the end. And the agenda for today, for National Engineering Month, I would like to start out by comparing engineering and cybersecurity, along with today's cybersecurity challenges, different attack vectors, and so I'm just going to pause for a second. I believe that we're at capacity. That's why we're paused at 100. Is there any way to stream this, maybe?
Unfortunately, we don't have anything set up right now. So this is recorded, so we will share the recording with people who are unable to join after the meeting.
Okay. So congratulations to the 100 that have made it through for this talk. Okay. So continuing on, different attack vectors that are here within the mobility space, evolution of the IT networks, products and services that we have for our customers, and key security teams within TELUS, and for folks that are new, the entry into security. So with that, cybersecurity and engineering are very similar in professions as in Canada. While cybersecurity is not regulated like electrical, civil, mechanical engineering disciplines, it does come under the same professional demands. That's probably why many security jobs will have the title or term like engineer in them. But the practice of a professional engineer is an act that requires application of engineering principles and concerns to this safeguard of life, health, property, and economic interests and public welfare, and managing such acts. So in our modern world, all of these areas intertwine with health records in healthcare to the integrity of the banking data and finances that we have. So those all cross over computer networks and systems and data that needs to be protected from unauthorized access, use, or damage. So the job description of a cybersecurity professional is very similar to that of an engineer, where we ensure security is enforced through design, development, and implementation of complex systems while delivering effective solutions that professionals, while delivering these professional solutions, we have to have a deep understanding of mathematical principles such as cryptography and encryption that underpin all of modern communications. And that's just one example. And like any other engineer, it's upholding ethical standards and responsibility to public trust. And very similar to the PEng program, which is professional engineering designation, in cybersecurity, we have something similar, which is a CISP, Certified Information System Security Professional, provided by the International Information System Security Certification Consortium. So ISC squared. That's a big mouthful, but all to say that the requirements of a CISP, which is really the highest certificate that you can get in cybersecurity, is similar of that to a PEng, both requiring a certain level of education and experience in the field, along with continuous development every year. And so with that, what is a cybersecurity presentation if we don't talk about the current threat landscapes that we find ourselves here at TELUS? Before any war is launched, communications are deployed. And that's why, Starlink has been very pivotal in Ukraine and Russia. And that's also the reason why we see preemptive reconnaissance of operations on telecoms performed by Russia. That's why there's a dedicated nation-state attack group, threat actor called Salt Typhoon, sponsored by China, that's continuously poking at Western telecoms. Although these are attacks, we also have normal day-to-day business outages. I'm sure everyone remembers last year of how a untested software deployment brought down so many systems worldwide, causing about $5.4 billion in damages in different industries like airlines and healthcare and financials. Or when a telecom's router gets misconfigured, causing The Weeknd to cancel his concert in Toronto. So to prevent these attacks from materializing, there's resiliency in proactive and reactive measures. Proactive being continuous monitoring of systems and the constant threat intelligence while gathering intel and learning in the ever-changing cybersecurity landscape, to the testing and updating of security systems. And of course, when these systems do go down, how are we getting effectively restoring them and mitigating any attacks in the future to minimize any downtime? So far, as an ISP, we've handled these pretty well internally. We have insight into traffic patterns and have been able to block about 3.5 billion malicious emails over our network and about 4 billion attacks on our website alone. Again, these flare up at times of international conflict. For example, when we raise tariffs to China, we'll see a spike in denial of service attacks, or at least attempts to. And this is all done with the help of our team members, over 70 people in the security operations, and bilingual at that. Our SOC has been so good that we've extended the program and learning out to different companies via our managed services. And they've handled and triaged about 20,000 alerts alone last year, along with maintaining a 3-minute mean time to respond window. And that's exactly why we're trusted by over 700 of our peer Canadian organizations and are managing over 80,000 of their security appliances. We leverage our world-class innovation and dominance as to expand more than just a telco. And what I mean by that is I would like to go over some of the portfolios that we developed and products in that. So with the dominance in telco, we've been able to launch a TELUS agriculture and consumer goods business, shortened to TELUS Ag, from farm to fork. TELUS agriculture provides solutions for animal agriculture feed services to monitoring the health of cattle, even the genealogy of cattle, and packaging for consumer goods. This requires tapping into the international supply chain and providing data for proper pricings to organizations, and leveraging even satellite imagery that can impact on-the-ground IoT sensors. To TELUS Health, maybe everyone's familiar with the MyCare app. It's difficult finding a healthcare provider, so this has been beneficial to increasing the accessibility. And the EMR, electronic medical records, along with pharmacy management and enterprise benefits management. Also, TELUS Communications. So with mobility and home solutions, as many people here have, to network infrastructure that we've given to customers. and the managed security services, some of which I've helped develop, SASE, Next-Gen Firewall, and professional security services, such as pen testing, to consumer-facing security products like TELUS Online Security, in which we've partnered with McAfee to bring VPNs and also monitor credentials of consumers in the dark web, and smart home security, where we provide great uh, emergency line services for any emergencies that you might have. So that's what we've been able to come up with here in TELUS. But going into originally our mobility space, you know, how we made this resilient and what are the attacks that we see happening to these from a security perspective. And so telecoms can get very tricky, and I've broken it down into two simple planes just for us to focus and understand on, and all the measures that can be put in for cyber resiliency. We have the user and control plane. The user plane is where we all function when we're making a phone call or a text. It starts with the user equipment to base station to UPF, which is a user plane functions, basically setting up tunnels and taking them down and out to the internet. What we can see is abuse of these networks, such as unauthorized parties getting access to it, to even the supply chains. So when building out these networks, there's a lot of zero-day vulnerabilities in the routers and systems that come together and can be exploited. But there's not really much users can do to attack us, which is where we have to be more so worried about what's happening in our core. So just building up what the core is looking like. With networks, we have the access management functions. This is ensuring whoever's allowed access into the radio antennas, and then our session management functions. So how valid SIMs will be set up and taken down. To deeper into 5G components, such as the network slice section function, the exposure functions that we have, network exposure functions, repository functions, and then visited security edge protection proxies that goes out to other telecom providers to their home security edge proxies, all through the public LAN mobile networks. There's a lot of terms, and you don't need to know all of them to understand where the attacks are really coming from. So 5G comes with many services. I've just simplified them to 4 here, but all these services really talk to each other in more of a producer and consumer type of API calls. And there's a lot of data that's being exchanged for just a user to access their end goals. So with these, there's a lot of APIs that are being called internally and that are exposed for managing them. And just like any API attack, we have to be considerate about the versioning of APIs along with authentication and authorization for valid API calls and configuration of these network elements. But there's also a weakness in the internal components and architecture. With 5G, we're deploying in more of a software methodology. So concerns from libraries and software packages to also the containers that they're being deployed on. So Kubernetes, VMware, OpenStack, and other bare metal machine vulnerabilities that can come in. So hardening them is a good first step along with proper security DevOps model, which I'll get into a bit later. All to say, what a hacker is really trying to get access to here is CDR. So call customer data records, subscriber billing information, all that we have to be really making sure that we're PCI compliant. So the financial data is not getting leaked for customers. And again, with my defense background, these CDRs can also pinpoint users and where they are. It can give you so much information that definitely a nation state would be very interested in. And not to mention third parties. So when telecoms were first designed, there wasn't much security in mind. And now we've grown into over 750 mobile operators. So that's a lot of zones, a lot of international transfer of data, and underlying networks that were never secured in the first place. We can talk about SS7, or how one mixed configuration in the DNS has brought down services over the world that has happened in the past in China and Pakistan. So defense against these are, good access controls and a layered approach, having multiple sets of trusted and untrusted zones between where humans are never allowed to touch and only machine to machine communication, and also good architect for IT and operational technology connectivity. Resilience also comes in the form of handovers. So at least when telecom providers go down and services down, in the case for emergency services, we hand it over to our partners. So I've shared a really brief glimpse into the network challenges that we face as a service provider. However, at the same time, we're ingesting all of these services behind the scenes for ourselves as well. So it's a complex web of where our IT starts and where our operational technology is. So maybe let's scale down to just looking at IT. And with that, I want to look at the two verticals that we're incubating: TELUS Health and agriculture. So these companies are less attached to their products as a telecom network may be, as a telecom network is to their operational technology. Here, both of these companies really deploy more so web apps. With that, we have to introduce DevSecOps, where developers will write code that goes into production, non-prod production, and then having rollbacks and methodologies of selective rollouts between small sets of users. That's all done within a CI/CD pipeline, continuous integration and continuous deployment. This is where infrastructure as code really comes in handy. So versioning between different code and making sure that even if your system goes down and there's some problems, that you can go back to a previous state of the code and bring it back up. And of course, with code, you have static application security testing. So I like to think of this as code at rest. So when you write, as a developer, when you write codes, you have libraries and frameworks that you're leveraging. So at rest, looking at vulnerabilities within those that have come out. As recent as yesterday, Next.js issues with authentication. So these are very happening and needed.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I'm on another call right now, so.
Oh, sorry, John, you might need to be muted.
Yeah, the good
So
news with that band 30 looks promising based on the initial check. There's very little interference in that area, so
John,
it looks like just high level. We don't have the official go ahead, but it looks doable. That's a
okay, I'll continue. I'll continue on now. Sorry, SaaS as at rest. So, SaaS, static application security testing. Basically, when code is at rest, we're sending it to, we're checking what developers have made, and testing the libraries, ensuring that they're up to date.
Can you hear me? Did I cut out? Oh, it's probably because I'm on the second call. It's muting me.
Okay. Sorry, dynamic. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I have the one
So
at 430. I have both. What's this one at 430?
Can you say John is a security threat?
might be. Would someone mind pinging John on? Yeah, be able to. Okay, thank you. See, and threats pop up every day. So clearly someone is trying to. There's an attack group after me, for some reason. Okay, going back to DevSecOps. All right, I feel like this is the third time I've had to start this again. Um, so code at rest, standard checks. But there's also when code is being deployed. You have containers and VMs that are spun up for you. Within this, there's workloads and applications that you have to look at. So DAST is another priority. And of course, when you're deploying these web apps, there's pen testing and web application firewalls that you can put in front. Web application firewalls, simple enough to spin up, basically avoid any DDoS attacks to your application and scaling them as needed. To now the IT portion of this, and really one of the more challenging spaces. So as TELUS Ag and Health grow, they have inorganic drivers of growth, which is really through mergers and acquisitions. So a lot of third parties are involved, where that's when systems are most vulnerable as business is going through a major change. And that's the best time anyone would want to attack. And when you're merging companies, it's almost like you're put into the mindset of an attacker, and you have to scan the new company that you're acquiring, because you'll take on the risks and assets that they have. So verifying what they're selling is true, but then also categorizing their assets into priorities of what to secure first. For example, an Active Directory that controls access to many systems. Compromising it can give an attacker the full control over their network, and these are areas that need the highest level of protection. Compromising that could be the most catastrophic. So identifying what's in your inventory and then prioritizing that is key for mergers and acquisitions. And the third-party tooling that you take on from a separate company can actually just be ransomware as well. Executing at 11:59 midnight, so it doesn't show up on your logs. These are all challenges that you have to go through in mergers and acquisition space. To the different sets of orchestration. Resiliency also focuses on assured backups, but that has challenges of the different tooling of orchestrations that's there. And of course, having self-serve for employees who've been impacted by outages to reload their environments through orchestration methods. And not to mention the challenges of a fragmented network. Every company that gets acquired comes with their own set of 10.0.xx networks. So merging that is a big pain and challenge here. And while that's just standard merger and acquisition, the special case of TELUS Health is, of course, that it's in the health space. So while there are overlaps in controls, we can look into HIPAA, HIPAA, and PIPA, which are US, Canada, and Alberta health regulations. All of these are different jurisdictions to the GDPR, which is in Europe, and NIS2 as well in Europe. While all of these controls overlap in terms of how to handle data at rest and transit, the main issues with them are about data sovereignty and how the data of a country's citizens needs to remain there. So many of the products that are being delivered have registries to meet those challenges to ensure data sovereignty is checked off. And if you want more information about maybe resiliency, I would recommend the NIST, National Institute of Technology Standards and Technology, 800-160, to read up more about all the different controls that can be placed for resiliency in any organization. Now, these enterprises are evolving a lot, and their networking solutions have to meet the nature of their remote work. So going into evolution of what corporate networks have looked like. Historically, many enterprises have leveraged MPLS, multi-protocol label switching, which is almost like you can think of it like a separate internet where data is passed, which fixes like a network path from offices to data centers. So when companies are large enough to have different branch offices and remote campuses to connect with their main data center. Although great in bandwidth and definitely is going to stay here because of the legacy that's evolved, there's almost no security or privacy within that. And if an attacker was able to step in, then they would see everything in plain text. To now, what everyone's very familiar with, which is VPNs, the modern architecture allowing for organizations to allow their remote users to enter their network perimeter. everyone's familiar with this. We're using this right now on your Cisco VPN. However, I want you to envision in your head like a castle and a moat, where to enter in that castle, a drawbridge has to be lowered. And when the drawbridge is down, you're able to access all the goods within that castle. That's the same principle that a VPN tunnel is built on, that once your client has entered into the network perimeter, they almost have free reign to an extent into that network. And hopefully you're layering and subnetting properly, but really once you're in, you can move around. The security risk is if an attacker gains access to an employee's VPN credentials, then they'll be able to access all the data and applications that they had access to. But not to mention the latencies that's introduced with the VPN. I'm from Alberta. Luckily, in TELUS, we've had a Alberta VPN as well and concentrator here. However, if I had to remote into Toronto and then come back for some of my SaaS applications, then that would add so much latency between all of my requests. And with the modern challenge, as we shift towards the cloud, many of our day-to-day business is being handled by the SaaS application. And so a new mode of connectivity that's forming is SSE, or Secured Service Edge. So instead of having to go through your organization's data center, you can leverage the data centers of these SSE providers. Here again, I tell us we're a bit lucky where we have everything in Alberta, Quebec, Ontario, but not many companies are to this scale. So what are the main pillars of SSE? Having a secure web gateway. So this is access to different POP locations, points of presence, where URL filtering, malware inspection can be done closer to the customer, but also CASB, Cloud Access Broker. So granting granular access to your cloud applications. So instead of having to go through a data center and then going to a cloud application, a user can just go right to the cloud application, and the granular access would be, okay, is this user someone who needs to just read or actually change content? For example, you may have Dropbox. Does a user only need to download information and material from Dropbox, or do they need to submit and modify data on there, or just read what's on without downloading it ever? To then ZTNA. Now with VPNs, again, once you're in, that's the end of story. However, with ZTNA, there's a continuous monitoring of zero trust network access. So the OS versions, the antivirus that's installed, and posture checking for continuously for a user. This also helps with the granular access. It also helps detection. So for example, let's say a user does get access, or a hacker does get access into an environment, but now is trying to leverage that into gaining access into other resources that this user wouldn't be allowed. Now, because we've narrowed down initially what a user is able to do centrally, we can better have intrusion detection systems if that endpoint is actually compromised, because no user is going to try to gain privileged access into other systems. So SSE is definitely new and cutting edge, and what 60% of businesses are going towards for 2025 and beyond. And these are very complicated rollouts to do. So luckily here at TELUS, we like to think of ourselves as a one-stop shop for cybersecurity. And we followed a NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology framework, to provide services and solutions for our customers who don't have such a history of IT experience and don't have like the bandwidth to do all of these. So we follow this framework at the core, which is identify, understanding the business context, assets, and risks to protect, implementing the safeguards and protecting critical assets, to detecting any cybersecurity events and responding to the incidents, and of course, recovering from an attack and restoring operations as normal, all underpinned by governance. So some concrete examples that I'd like to take you through for our managed services and professional services. Just picking one here is asset discovery and vulnerability scanning. You can't protect something you don't know about. In the field, again, there will be random jump points or isolated networks that get lost in the shadow IT realm of the operations that TELUS here can help discover to protection. One of the portfolios that I've worked on is the next-gen firewalls, appliances that are tested and configured well, and we provide high availability for to protect customers' assets and segment networks within them. Two, detection. So this would be endpoint management, detection and response, looking through logs and other telemetry data of an endpoint to understand whether an intrusion has happened or is happening right now. To even when it comes to response, planning your incident response plans, and of course, recovering and being part of the forensics team that can help go back to business as normal, business continuity stage. So what are the key teams in maintaining all of these resiliency and security? Of course, I mentioned the SOC, Security Operations Center, which maintains 24/7 monitoring of network and security systems through a SIM, Security Information Event Management Systems. Basically, a Splunk or GCP or Elasticsearch log ingestion program that then you can launch queries through to search for indicators of compromise, to the SOAR, security orchestration automation platforms, creating playbooks that match the new ever-changing indicators of compromise to then have playbooks to reset endpoints to a valid state or isolate endpoints if they have been compromised. I like to think of like maybe an exploit that might have just been released that requires a set of programs to launch. So reviewing that exploit chain and then turning that into a playbook is how we respond at scale. To then the next team, which is TCERT, TELUS Security Incident Response Team. This is specialized for internal threats at TELUS. Basically, they're first on the scene, responding to incidents and performing digital forensics, malware analysis, and isolating environments, and performing root cause analysis on major incidents and triaging company-wide phishing campaigns. To another cool security team, which is fraud. So as a large retailer, we have fraud really at our front doors. False subscription activations, scammers who use false identity or credit cards to obtain handsets and walk away with them, to even locking down SIM swaps and identity. To Cloud CCOE, Cloud Center of Excellence, CCOE, which at an organization at this scale is important as it really ensures the best practices are done through the cloud and locking that down. For example, if you're a developer here, they're the ones who will provide the static code analysis and prevent credential leaks in code, along with preventing overprivileged accounts. To then the DTO, just checking on time. So this is a team that does a lot of privacy impact statements, assessments to comply with TELUS privacy commitments, customer contracts, and applicable laws and industry standards that we have. So for all the students that are maybe here, you can see that there's many different career paths within cyber. Going on, cloud is a growing industry. By the end of this year, it's projected to be $66 billion in the Canadian cloud market. And from our cloud survey done last year, 22% of that is just going to be security spending alone. So to be in the seat of a CSO, you have to actually first understand some of the basics of this industry. I'll go over this really quick. The most entry-level certification that many students may do is a CompTIA Security Plus, and it's recognized at an industry-wide level. Many jobs will require this, at least in security, as a starting step. However, I do recommend more technical focused certifications, because as security is seen as both like in security jobs, you need both development and the security function in them. It's hard to sometimes justify payroll for just securing an asset but not developing. So here I've laid out 3 certifications that we might have to gain fundamentals in cloud: AZ 900, which is the basic foundations of the Azure cloud, to AZ 500, which is a bit more advanced, to the SC 900, focused on security and compliance in the MS 360 environment. And lastly, if you're a professional already, but still want some practical knowledge, the SSCP, so System Security Certified Practitioner, which is again provided by the ISC squared that I mentioned earlier. Although it might cost money to take the exam, there's free training online that can help you maybe in your day-to-day learn about security and network systems alike. So with that, I've given a little bit for everyone, for security folks, for mobility, and for the new entrants in the engineering month, and taking a look at what TELUS does. So with that, I was joking about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comment, but I'm more than happy to take any questions now.
Thank you so much, Harry. Yeah, we actually had some questions in the meeting chat, so I will ask them to you now. And then after that, if anyone wants to ask questions, they can just speak up. So the first question we had from Mujtaba was curious what IoT devices are used in the agriculture space.
Good questions. These would be sensors that are on the farms. I would have to get back to you on that one. There's definitely scanners that are used for all the different devices that come like in a farm environment. The scanners are definitely like very unique and something, but I'm not sure what company within TELUS Ag offers that one.
Okay, thank you. And we also have 2 more questions from Mujtaba. First of all is that they've been hearing that Canadians used to heavily store data in the States, and now that's shifting. Is that a true sentiment across the market? And how large is the shift, if any? Also, what infrastructure do you need to deploy for an SSE data center? And does TELUS operate in this area?
Okay, great questions, great questions. So when it comes to data retention, whenever you're handling a government contract, the data has to stay within Canada or Canadian citizens. So companies that are in heavily regulated industries like TELUS, like health, have to make sure that data stays here. And luckily enough, we are primarily GCP house. So there's data centers in Toronto and Montreal that we leverage, and new ones that are being built out. And as for the second question, when it comes to SSE, those data centers are deployed by service providers like Cisco, Fortinet, Zscaler. They'll have data centers kind of populated around the world. But they do make like partnerships with ISPs like TELUS or like AT&T in the US to get faster access for customers to like their cloud applications. They also partner with the major cloud providers to get like customers access, like direct access that way. it's a fascinating place to see. I would suggest like searching up a YouTube video by any of the providers to see kind of where their point of presence is.
Okay, thank you, Harry. So that's all the questions we had from the meeting chat. If anyone in the call would like to speak up with their questions, now is the time.
Hi, Harry. I have a quick question. So I'm mostly interested in when you were suggesting certifications. I couldn't help but notice you mostly brought up Microsoft stuff. Even though, as you said, we're kind of moving to more of a GCP platform.
For sure. This was well, if you're in TELUS, I'm sure if you're already internal within TELUS, I'm sure you have your own agendas and ideas of what you'd want to do in your job function. This is really more for the students that may be on the call, as this is a partnership with National Engineering Month with the Ontario Engineering Society. So for them, a big player in the Canadian market at least is Azure. And to give them a leg up in the job market, this would be great. Of course, if they want to come to TELUS, GCP skills are very necessary. But this was just me seeing overall and maybe what's the best interest for them.
Oh, fair enough. Thank you.
I would say in security, like if someone comes for certification recommendations, I say just further into the technologies that you're working with. For example, myself, I work closely with Fortinet solutions. So diving more into that would be a better return on investment than something external, unless I want to make like a bit of a pivot.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Feel free to connect with me offline as well. And thank you, Eileen, for the opportunity and hosting this. And also shout out to National Engineering Month.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. And in case you have some teammates who are not able to join, this meeting was recorded and the recording will be shared shortly after today. Thank you all and hope you have a good rest of your day.